Good afternoon, everyone. Carm Capriato, Town Hall Academy. What number are we in? Does anybody know? Wow, we are we're sure rocking an awful lot here with all these great episodes. Uh, I have to say this is an important one because there's so much going on inside the industry of regarding succession and wanting to buy shops, and for so many owners wanting to know, what do I do next? I'm getting old, and I want to move on. Great episode. It is week 263. We're talking about the leap from employment to ownership, and sometimes an exciting but yet very nerve-wracking move for any service advisor, shop foreman, shop manager, or technician to want to do. I'd like to introduce my great panel, Bob Ward from Perpetual Business at perpetualbusiness.co. Hey, Bob.
I'm glad to be back, Carm.
Thank you so much. But Bob is always here when we talk about this real heavy stuff. So thank you for bringing your heaviness here. Craig Tice is here, a 20-year technician. Hello, Craig.
Hello, Carm.
And he has a great, interesting story. Basically, he's a current technician, former shop owner, and he wants to get back in it. He wants to get ownership going again. And no greater person to talk to than Bob and James. James Maurer. I'm sorry, I forgot to get the right pronunciation, James, of your last name.
That was good. It's Maurer.
Yep. Maurer. Cool.
Yes,
now, he's a former service advisor, and he's now a GM in owner transition at Midas of Kalkaska, Michigan. Hey, James.
Yes, hi.
Glad to have you there, and congratulations. I mean, wow, what a title, owner in transition. I love that. That is
Thank
so
you.
cool. Hey, look at there's a bunch of things that I would love to know, and that I hope that we cover while we're here. What happens with an owner who is kind of in his late 50s, maybe early 60s, and saying, well, Bob, you've been on before. We've done shows on I want $1 million for my business. And sometimes the reality sets in when they do the discovery and they can't figure that quite out. So what are owners doing to plan, and where are the candidates that are out there? And are we hiring for our future? I think it's one of the keys when we bring on new people. And what about this great opportunity for James and Craig? Hopefully we discover a lot of that. And does a former technician make a great shop owner? There's a whole bunch of them out there that I know that said, I didn't know what I was doing, and it took me too long to figure it out. And what can we learn from today's episode that takes you to a much better place? Hey, I think, what are we doing next week? I think we have a show coming up next Friday. Oh, no, yeah, that's right. This Tuesday, Aftermarket Weekly, Tom Ciortino from Total Automotive here in Buffalo, New York, in my hometown. And Tom and I are you're going to see a great tour from him. And next Friday, Learning Environment Part 2. I got to tell you, this group got together about 10 weeks ago with me and blew my mind about the state of training and learning environments today, and to get the right return on investment on all of our training. And I know they're going to knock this out of the ballpark here with Part 2. Hey, I want to give a high five out to my great partners, Shopware. Now, how many tabs do you have open on your screen right now? Come on. Be honest with me. Now, Shopware's all-in-one shop management platform provides a direct integration to more than 3,000 business and marketing tools so you can focus on your day. Talk to my friends at getshopware.com. Hey, running a busy shop can be a challenge. And with Broadly's web chat feature, you can respond to a question of theirs right on your phone, anywhere at any time. Hey, be in touch with your customer inquiries at getbroadly.com/chat. Hey, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and thanks. Okay, let's jump in this thing in segment A. Bob, I want to know from you the difference between being an employee versus being an owner. And I know that's an awful lot to lay on your shoulders right away. And you could go
I'll
on
make
for,
it easy. I'll make
you
it
could
easy.
go on for you can go on for 2 hours and talk about that. But yeah, define it for me.
Well, the topic is the leap from employment to ownership, and it truly is a leap, and all the existing owners already did it. We all begin with nothing. We don't have any money. We don't have business education. We've never owned a business before. That's how we all began. We had a skill, just like Craig, just like James. We had a skill, and we decided to take the leap and own our own business. So as employees, we don't have anything invested except our personal skill. And our compensation is based on the personal skill. Likely there's an incentive, flat rate, or commission if you're a service advisor, but there's limited upside. At the same time, there's very little risk. The worst thing that can happen to an employee is they lose their job and they go get another one. So employment is a very different experience. And if you want to have control over your own future, your own compensation, your own time, you must make that leap. So an owner now has unlimited upside, total control over what they're going to do, a huge learning curve, and unlike just losing a job as an employee, an owner can potentially lose everything, all their money, their reputation, their home, their wife, and the family pet. So it truly is a leap. And those that have done it are great mentors and a great source of knowledge and training if they choose to make that effort. And I want to share a quote that I always use when I'm chatting on either a podcast or in one of my classes, that it is only as we develop others that we will permanently succeed. So the owners listening out there, it is incumbent upon you to develop your people so that you can leave and you will be incredibly successful. The ability to sell your shops to an aggregator in the mechanical world certainly exists. They are out there, not quite like collision. It's possible, but the odds are not in your favor, where if you develop your people to become your next successor or successor partners, the odds are highly in your favor. Back to you, Carm.
Wow.
That was good.
Okay. Thanks for being here, guys. The show's over.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And as you were saying a few of those things, Bob, I saw Craig going, been
Mm-hmm.
there, done
Yeah.
that.
Done that. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. Well, I don't know. In my case, right? We talked about. I was 11 years working for a Honda dealership. They treated me well. I loved what I did, and decided, hey, let's do our own thing and start our own business, which I did, and quickly found out fixing the cars is the easiest part of the whole job. And I loved it. I loved the business. Um, I had the business open 7.5 years in total, but ended up going through some pretty serious personal struggles that ended up, by the time it was all said and done, going bankrupt and owing the government a bunch of money. And uh, been back to working for somebody else for the last 6 years, and can't seem to get that owner bug out of my system. And I'm looking to get back into it again. And my question to Carm was, I've been listening to his podcasts for at least 4 years. My interest was, all right, for those of us that are techs, looking to start a business from a owner maybe that's ready to retire or some of that kind of stuff, what the best, what some of the options are to be able to offer to an owner, or even from my perspective, what I need to know as a tech to be able to offer to somebody.
Bob, I'm sorry, but I've never heard the term owner bug. And,
Let me change that to say owner passion. It's a drive to be an owner, to direct your own life and finances. And you have to start with that passion. All the owners that are listening or will ever listen to this podcast know exactly what I'm talking about. They were comfortable where they were with whatever skill they started, but they had a passion to be in charge of their own life. That is the kind of successor that we want. We want people like Craig, who has the bug, which is incurable. Change the word to passion, that drive. James is a great example. He'll share a little bit of his story that I helped with in that transition. I tell owners, hire for passion, not pedigree. Everything that Craig wants to learn is available. It's all there. It does take effort. It takes that commitment, that drive to get it done. But if he has the passion, everything else can be trained. Every owner out there started with nothing. And they went through the trials, they went through the challenges, they overcame them, they suffered setbacks, and they've created something of incredible value. And they deserve to get paid for their life's work. And everybody remember this. Every owner is going to leave their business. There's no exception. They're either going to die at the business or they're going to successfully retire, but every one of them is going to leave. They all need somebody to follow them.
Wow. So well said, Bob. I'm always inspired by your great wisdom and the guidance that you give, not only to the listeners, but to the industry and all the deals that you've helped perpetuate. There's a
Thank you.
play on words for perpetual business. James, do you have that owner passion?
Absolutely. I might be relatively young, but I've been working for a real long time. So the owner passion comes from wanting to do my own thing, being, able to provide my owner with my availability is very important. Um, yeah, the passion's there, so it's nice.
Let's talk about a little bit of the transition that you have going on. Randy, am I right? Is the
Yes,
owner?
sir.
You and Randy continuing to work together to provide you guidance, direction, coaching, read this. Give me an idea of where you stand.
It's a marriage.
Ah,
Yeah, that's if we're not both in it wholeheartedly, then it doesn't work for either of us. He wants me to succeed just as much as I do, which makes this relationship work, which is a key to the whole foundation, is that owner that has a willingness to do this, as well as the technician.
Hey, James, share when you actually began the discussion, like how many years ago, and how that developed to be where you are now.
So I guess the process has been a little longer than we would expect, just due to the ownership and how thorough he is. Um, I started here in late 15. We began the conversation in early 16, maybe even late 15. I wasn't here that long.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we've taken steps progressively over the last 6.5 years from there to get to where we are now, is earning equity and keeping the train rolling. Because Randy's built a successful thing. I'm not here to change it, just to keep alive.
by the way, great question, Bob. But was it James? Did you approach Randy? Did Randy sit down with you? Take us to the day that the spark started.
So I think Randy was sort of in his find a way out a few years prior to when I got there. But no, he approached me one day when I was downstairs cleaning. Yeah, we came in, had a talk, asked if I was interested, and I said yes.
What did he see in you, James?
I hope he saw that I was here every day and willing to do what was necessary. And Randy's a pretty strict individual, so if you can abide by the rules and understand how things go, I think your relationship is a little bit stronger, obviously. But I wasn't in the industry. I wasn't a technician for 20 years before I came here, so it definitely was not, this guy can fix cars. But what I do have is the availability to find knowledge, find the answer to things, make people come together, Um, team environment is what we preach, and I think that's what we have.
It sounds like you had the right stuff.
That would
Yeah,
have summed it up.
and I'm gonna add that James is a very humble person. He's modest, he's low key, he is incredibly persistent and driven, ethical, reliable. He has all the traits that an owner would want, which is why this came together a few years ago. And while James may not share this with you, the company is having its very best last couple years in its history. And it's partly because of the strength of what Randy built, like other owners. But James is working to take it to another level, and he's just incredibly successful.
Wow, it's a marriage, like you say. Partnership is producing some incredible results and opportunities for you, James. Uh,
Absolutely.
wow, great. So Craig, you're listening to this. If, having been a former owner and sitting inside of a shop, you really don't necessarily know if your owner is ready, right?
Well, I mean, I think he is ready. But in his case, he's been in the owner 25 years, right? And it's his business, and it's something he's proud of, and something that I'm proud to work. It's in a community that I live in, and my kids go to school around the corner, and I go to church there and shop there. So for me, I love the community that I'm in. The hard part, I think, for me is going to be um, getting him to do what needs to happen in order to sell the business, or allow me to, even be able to in the short term take over what's there. And that's been kind of a struggle, especially over the last year and a half or so.
All right, Bob, I'd love you to give some advice to Craig regarding what's required to transition to ownership.
I'd be happy to. And before I do that, a follow-up question to Craig. What conversation have you had to this point? What's your understanding of where you stand with your owner?
Well, he would love me to take the business over, and that's been uh, something that he would like to do. I'm not going to get into into his
Mhm.
personal. He's having some personal issues and some health issues and some of that kind of stuff. And that's, for me, I'm like, I want to be able to help him, you know, get into the business really before there's nothing left of value. And that's kind of been my interest, especially over the last 6 or 8 months, to really start to push him. I don't want to force him to do it, but I also want to be able to help him make the decisions that need to be made before he's forced into doing them, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And what I would say to that is he very likely and hopefully feels the same way about you. He wants to have an exit plan. He does not want to die in the business and have it be liquidated. And about 85% of small businesses in all industries are, in fact, liquidated. There just isn't a buyer there to take it over when the owner leaves. It's a very sad statistic. Really, that's like 15% are the only ones that survive the departure of the current owner. So he needs you as much as you want him. It's how it happens. And I want to share that it is virtually never an event. And it's not an event because there's people development that needs to be done, extra skills that you want to have and need to be successful. And the money is not there among buyers. Unless you're a corporate aggregator, people do not have money in this generation. You are not going to write a $500,000 check or whatever the number is and hand it to them and it's done.
Yep.
Those just don't happen. The majority of key employees buying into the business, it happens over time. The amount of money up front is usually insignificant. If we just think about the 65-year-olds, half of whom can't can't retire, they have no retirement savings. And those are the people who work their whole life. Then you go down to the 50-year-olds, 40-year-olds. How many of those have significant assets, could write a check for $100,000, let alone if you're 35? But those issues can all be overcome. It can be a transition process, a lot like James, where he is earning equity prior to the actual sale of all the assets. It's a contractual obligation. Someday we might get into more of the details of that, although perpetualbusiness.co has some of that info in a video that would help get people started. But think of it as a process, not an event, a lot like the marriage that James was talking to you. Before we got married, we went through having coffee first, and then we went to dinner, and we decided we liked each other, and we worked through, and the relationship developed, and then we started talking about marriage. But it might be a whole year or 2 or 3 before we actually swore before God and our friends that we were committing to this. The key is start the process. And if the parties have the comfort and confidence that this is right, then the commitment will happen.
Wow.
I love it when you say that, Carm.
Every time I bring Bob on, I listened like intently, that my life depended on it, right? and I'm always motivated by the power of the words. And all I say is, if everyone could listen to this, they can figure out tomorrow.
Yeah.
And listen, we, on our collections page on the website, under resources, there's this collection page, and the most critical episodes about succession planning, and Bob, you've been on a lot of them, they're all there. There's like a dozen of them. You can start at the beginning and go to the end and listen to all of these with this recurring theme. And I tell you, it had to be about 4 or 5 years ago, and I think it was Ron Haugen came on, and he was telling us about, I don't know if you helped Ron do his deal, Bob. I don't really quite remember, but
no, but I know Ron.
Yeah, you know Ron, and he talked to a little bit about formulating and the equity earn up that obviously, James, that's what you're doing, and it's like, I don't know, he's never going to have enough money. Who am I going to sell to? Stop the insanity. There are options out there, and that's what I find so refreshing, and I think we're kind of, if you will, laying up again to our audience that if you want to own a business, the one that you're working for, then go for it. But don't go into a discussion by, hey boss, I want to own your business. You got any ideas? No, don't do that. Listen to those 12 podcasts and formulate your own personal ideas. Get the yellow pad out and start writing down your vision, your goals, and your dreams, and then offer it up to an owner who may not even have a clue. They're just too damn close to the problem, and they literally can't see via that, and they're just saying it may be someone else's problem because I may die behind my desk. And that's not what anyone, I think, is looking for, especially the family. Hey, listen, let's, I'm loving where this is going. And let's get back to James here in a minute. Let's thank again our great partners. Are you sick of seeing your techs roam around the shop instead of working on cars? Well, I thought so. Shopware's streamlined digital communication makes it real easy for your team to work together and get approvals a whole lot faster. Find out more on the web at getshopware.com. And, lots of companies say they can help your shop get more reviews, but what do they really offer? Well, Broadly is the only platform that partners with Google for reviews and messaging in the auto space. On the web at getbroadly.com/chat. So this whole buying in equity, James, which I think is one of the most brilliant ways to do a deal, Craig, for especially for you, Craig, is like Bob says, I'm sure you're not sitting on a $500,000 of cash.
Yeah, no, that went out the door over the last 5 years trying to get out of the hole I was in.
Uncle Sam had his hand in your
bag,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So James, without really sharing a whole lot, I mean, this was was the buy-in equity idea something that you had heard about or thought about, or was it something that Randy shaped for you, and you were so relieved to realize that you can earn in?
I don't believe the concept was new to me. I think it was new with the aspect of buying something so substantial without accruing that debt right up front. Um, and I've honestly been so lucky with this process with Randy and Bob together. Um, Sometimes I feel like I'm just kind of riding the wave while these guys handle it. But yeah, there was no other way to do it. So I believe that part of it is we were stuck in that type of situation, but it also worked for both of us. For him having a constant employee and me having a future.
It's exciting. I'm excited for you, knowing as you say, Randy is so particular, but for both of you to land where you landed by putting a deal together to make it work as a teammate now, and you're in elevation to own the business. Is there any team dynamics that you could share with us?
So the team dynamics, I believe, come from we're all one. There's not really a decision I make that affect our day to day that the group's not involved in.
Mhm.
It's everybody's got to have a say. That way, if it goes good, if it goes bad, we're all sitting there holding the spoon.
How many days a week does Randy come into the business, James?
Currently, they come in Tuesdays. Yeah.
1 day a week.
Yep, they come in. We have management meetings Tuesday mornings. They're here for the day, catching up on stuff or just hanging out, and then they're off back at home. They still do quite a bit of work from home. Obviously, Kathy still manages the accounts and things like that. But yeah, they're only in the business 1 day a week.
Craig, did I hear from you that you were worried about where the direction of the business, and there may not be anything to buy?
Yeah, I am on some level. Not that there wouldn't be something to buy. It's um, the lack of direct. Let's put it this way: the lack of direction on his part has got me a little concerned. My wife's like, "Well, why do you want to do?" I said, "Well, if it doesn't work, everybody's hiring, right? I can always go somewhere else, but I don't really want to do that." And with the business that I was building before, coming out of the dealership, I had an idea of what the shop needed to look like, how it needed to perform, all the processes. And it was the only one really in my little town that really had that or even was building towards that. And there's still nobody that does that. So that's still my goal, to be able to build a shop like that, to be, growing in the community I'm in, that's growing like crazy, and know that there's money to be made. And the only, you know, shop that's been built recently, right, is Firestone, and they're in their own world, separate than the rest of us small shops. So, but my fear is that unless I have some kind of direction to give him, it won't happen, and then there won't be really anything left.
Uh, I, I'm kind of moved, Bob, by what Craig is saying. It sounds smart, intelligent, well thought out, and it's almost like he may be positioning for his second chance. Is there any great advice? I mean, any succession steps that you can provide him?
Sure. First, I think it's important for the potential buyers as well as the current owners to remember that the owners started with virtually no money. If I am in a class and I've got 100 shop owners in my class, and I just ask for a show of hands, how many of you started your business with more than $50,000? No hands go up. How about 25? One or two? How about less than 10? And 98 hands will go up. So the owners did this with no money to start. If they can do it, there's a way to transition it to the next owner who may have little money to start, but they've got the advantage of knowing how the business is currently operating. Craig would have relationships with the other employees that are most assuredly successful, relations with clients. He's known in the community. He's got more than what the original owner started with, where there was nothing. So Craig already has a lot of great assets, and he is just as needed in the business as the owner is at this point. As Craig mentioned, he could go get a job anywhere. He could literally pack up his tools spontaneously, put them on a tow truck, and go across the street and be hired before the day is over. Owners must have their staff. The staff is the business, and whatever continuity can be maintained there increases the value of the business to an outside buyer, which is rare. But an outside buyer is buying the cash flow, and the cash flow is created by the people. So the more longevity you have with your current staff, the more valuable your business is to anybody. But you've got your own buyer likely in development already if you are aware of that. So I would encourage Craig to have a conversation that would go something like, hey, Mr. Owner, I'm interested in becoming an owner myself. I know you are going to be leaving the business at some point in time. Let's sit down and explore some possibilities. So no one's making a commitment at that point. We've got two people who are thinking about a more serious dating relationship, using that metaphor. And the next step is, let's explore some possibilities. You don't need to talk about price yet. You don't need to talk about financing. Just talk about timelines and what could work and how long we've got to make it work. Just take the first step towards having a more serious dating relationship in business and see where that takes you. That's the same way James started, and it took about 5 years to get to the contractual terms where price, financing, timing, legal details were all done. It's just not an event, it's a process. But for both sides, use your time wisely.
I don't know about you, Craig, but that was $1,000 worth of advice right there.
You got that right. Got my
Oh
pad
my.
here, and I'll go back and listen to it a few more times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and here, Bob, the thing that I think a huge takeaway for me is Craig is sitting across from the owner, and the owner says, "Well, have you been saving any money for a down payment?" And Craig's answer should be, "I have as much as you had when you started."
Yeah.
That's the answer, right?
It's far
That I could come
easier.
up with.
Yeah. And it's so much easier to transition a successful business and have it be perpetual than start all over with nothing. I bet none of the owners out there, none of them would say, knowing what I know, and I'm 30, 40 years older from when I started my business, I, I bet that none of them would want to start all over today and do it again.
Yeah.
Not that they couldn't, but it'd be so much harder now than it was 30 years ago to do.
Yeah. The other thing, Bob, is the whole dating thing. And James, you started dating Randy 5 years ago, right? Even though you were working for him, you were
Mhm.
dating. I think it is a great analogy. And Craig, that's what an interesting way to sit down. And again, I'm not just saying it's just you, Craig, but anyone who's listening, who's in the same position that you are, and has that dream and that goal of ownership of the place that they're currently working at, is to say, listen, it's going to take us a while to decide to get married, but we got to go on a couple of dates first.
Mhm.
And the dates is just the lunch, the dinners, the dialogue that needs to happen. I mean, again, Bob, I love the fact of the matter is that you just don't talk price. You don't talk about any of that stuff. There's a level of, will this work? Is there any compatibility to pull this thing off?
Yep. And what does Craig need to learn from his viewpoint? He might already be aware, I need more financial statement analytics information. I need some HR recruiting development, retention knowledge that I may not have had before. Then you get into nuts and bolts of proper insurance coverage and liabilities. There may be things he already knows he needs to learn. And by the same token, the owner is going to have an opinion about what Craig needs to build the owner's confidence that Craig is the right person. And again, it's a process. And sometimes the compatibility is really good right up front, and we start moving down that path where let's figure out what the appropriate price is in the next 6 months, etc. Or maybe it's just let's develop each other a little bit for the next 6 months. Let's have some learning objectives. Let's have more conversations. Let's see how this feels before we take another step. The most important part is to start for the owners to realize they're going to leave. Incontrovertible. They're going to leave. It's going to be on what terms are they going to leave?
And that's the emotional side of the transaction. I'd love to maybe get back and do a little deeper dive from all three of you on the emotional side. As we wind this up into segment C, everyone, thank you so much to my sponsors. Every minute of a text day impacts your profitability, so you want to track that time and make the most of it. Well, Shopware's shop management software will give you the transparency into each team member's performance. Learn all about it at getshopware.com. And lots of companies say they can help your shop get more reviews, but what do they really offer? Well, Broadly is the only platform that partners with Google for reviews and messaging in the auto space. On the web at getbroadly.com/chat. So, James, did you ever think you'd be dating Randy?
I can say I had every intention when I saw the place to purchase it. I didn't know who the owner was at that time, but I'm excited to do it for him.
I think the opportunity, Bob, which is probably why you're so darn busy, is there are so many shop owners out there that want to do something. And I do believe, Craig, like you've been listening to the podcast and been hearing these succession stories that we've been doing 12, 13, 14 of them. And they're interesting. They're sensitive. Sometimes it's tough love that people are hearing of the things that they have to do. I think Bob pointed it out earlier. There's just it just doesn't happen tomorrow. It is a process, and sometimes you get really stuck in the process and say, how come this can't happen faster? By the way, I can imagine how the spouse, the significant other, needs to be, on both sides, needs to absolutely be involved, and because it's a big bite for everyone. I've worked so hard all my life. This is the plan to get out, and I can't believe I'm going into debt like I am. And it may not be debt as much as it's the total responsibility and life change that totally happens with taking on that risk and people and that kind of responsibility. James, during the process of making the decision and getting a signature on a piece of paper, any major hurdles that you had to overcome?
I think you spelled it out pretty great there. Yeah, we just had purchased our house that obviously we clawed tooth and nail to get, and about 7 months after that happened, I was like, well, we are about to sign a piece of paper that says if this doesn't work, then we are moving. And it was tough. So
wow.
Yeah, I cooked dinner a few times and we got through it.
I mean, that's pretty darn heavy. I mean, that summed it right up right there.
Yeah.
It was like it was Atlas. You were holding up the world.
Yeah, it wasn't a conversation that we were expecting to have. You don't know what you don't know when you're in that process. And then when it became a reality, I think it was a hurdle, but it was something that had to happen so that we could understand the whole gravity of the situation.
And what does it look like now after you got over the hurdle? You just said what it was before the hurdle. Now, what does it feel like?
It feels fantastic. Yeah. Especially when you see your work working. It's what you're doing is you can see the numbers and has a direct impact. And it makes you feel a little more comfortable about it.
Tell me about coaching. Are you going to get any consulting and coaching from an outside source? Is Randy helping you with it? Your business acumen is coming from.
Bob.
Okay. Perfect answer. Hey, perfect answer.
Yeah, some people wonder why I want to do my Zoom meetings at 6:30 p.m. Well, because just like you were speaking, when I listen to Bob talk, it's almost like a relaxation for me, and my mind opens up, and I'm focused on one thing at the moment. So
Well,
yeah, I can't.
6:30. Yeah, 6:30 is 3:30 Bob time, right? Yeah, that's
I got to
right.
get
That's
him while he's
cool.
still fresh.
I love it. I can't imagine how inspiring he can be, James. That do you do this weekly? Do you do it monthly?
A couple times a month. Yep.
Great.
Tuesday evenings.
Wow.
It's nice.
Good for you. So, Craig, when you making the big decision?
I don't know. Like, hopefully probably this year, is something needs to happen, one way or the other. And for me, that's kind of why, I'm here listening, learning, getting little, tidbits of information. And, uh, I like the idea, Bob, that you mentioned, to be able to go back to the owner and say, what did you start with? And I mean, I know that answer already, but it would be, interesting to have that conversation with them and be able to say, hey, look, I know what you want to sell this business for, and it's a fair price, but it's not something that, your average person like me is going to be able to walk into a bank and get. And is there would you be open to other ways of, you know, purchasing it, uh, and that's kind of my thought as well.
If you've got the buyer, somebody that you're confident and comfortable with, everything else can be solved just like the owners solved it themselves when they started. Everything can be solved if you've got the talent.
Well, that's almost like the perfect ending to this show. Uh, does anyone have anything to cover to say that they haven't yet? Bob, I'll save you for the end. Craig, all I can, one of my strengths is ideation, and one of my problems is ideation, because I always come up with ideas and I always say, "Hey, did you think of it like this? And what about that?" So I'm sitting here listening to your story and listening to Bob and James, and I'm realizing that I've got to write myself down on a yellow pad all these things that I want to take my owner to dinner and talk about, and walk him through the scenario that you have it, that he probably never even thought of, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for you to sit down and then kind of state your first 5 critical movement points, and then sit on your hands and listen. And see what you're starting to hear. See if there's any great open or opportunity that you think you can solve before you even start getting into the financial statements, because he's going to sit across from you knowing he wants $1 million for his business because he worked so darn hard, and that that's not a real live doable number. But he's got to say that. He's got to come up to the reality that it's got to work for you and it's got to work for him. The reality of where the financial statements are pointing, because you can't you can't go underwater on day one.
Yeah. Well, and for me too, I've watched my dad. My dad's been a business owner basically my entire life. And he's in the process of transitioning out. That's been something that I've watched and listened to him talk about, where one of his employees is purchasing the business over the period of about 10 years. So I've seen it, I've watched it, I'm watching it happen, right? I know it can happen. And that's kind of, you know, why I wanted to get on here and say, hey, I'd like to be able to offer this to you. And is this something that we can do?
Thanks, and Nathan Adcock out from Scotland. He seems to always be with us. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, my friend, and all the great stuff that I continue to learn about you. James, any final words for our audience? Any motivation to help someone discover their next opportunity?
I would say just go for it. You got to get the ball rolling, and the sooner you find out if it's a possibility, you can either grasp it or move on to the next one.
Um, Thank you so much for that, Bob. Every time I have you on, you seem to go to new and different heights. There was a comment. I would love to get a summary, but Rachel Spencer put that up. Tracy, Rachel Spencer said, "Those that bought an existing business, did you have funds available for operating expenses to get started, or was this included in your loan for purchasing the business?" I mean, that's an interesting question.
Included. The money, you have to have operating capital. When I do a business valuation, part of what is purchased is retained working capital, usually about 1 month's worth of expenses. The buyers don't have a lot of money. So there's going to be a portion that's going to go towards buying some equivalent equity, or it's a down payment, depending on the type of creativity to get this done. But the answer is yes. Whomever is buying must have some working capital.
Yeah.
So just figure that 99 times out of 100, when you're selling your business, part of that purchase price is about a month's worth of expenses as working capital.
Yeah, and that's included in the deal, and the termed deal that you're getting from the owner. I'll give you the last word, my friend, Mr. Bob Ward.
Well, that's very kind of you, and you've all been very gracious and generous. I appreciate that. The other the other Firestone quote, Harvey Firestein. Yeah, it is Harvey Firestone. There's a Harvey Firestein, the actor, and Harvey Firestone, the businessman. The other quote that I very much like, and I want to end with this, it is: the growth and development of people that is the highest calling of leadership. And if you change the words just a little for you parents out there, and you change it to say, it is the growth and development of our children that is the highest calling of parenting. So all of us owners treat this business as if it was our baby, if it was our children. And the highest calling of parenting is to develop our kids to be able to move away and live on their own responsibly and successfully. And it's hard. It's hard to let go of the car keys at age 16, or let them go on a date where they don't come home till 2 a.m, or they move out of the house. It's very hard to do that. It's an emotional struggle. It's the same in business. It's very hard to let go, but it's your challenge as the ultimate leadership to be able to develop your people so you can leave and they can succeed. That's the challenge for all of us business owners. Develop our people, start the planning now, realize anything is possible, just like you did it. It's just a matter of exploring those possibilities, taking one step at a time and getting it done.
Oh, wow. How cool is that? And to build a perpetual business that outlasts you, no matter if you're not the owner anymore, it'll still be there. Thank you so much. Bob Ward, perpetualbusiness.co. If you were inspired by it, go to his website. There's a lot of great stuff there. And of course, he would be on your team to help you make that transition. Craig Tice, technician, the possibility guy. And James Maurer, former service advisor, now the GM and owner in transition at Midas of Kalkaska, Michigan. Thank you all so much. Very, very good episode. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Carm.
Bye, Al.